Juan Pablo Montoya's desire to find the absolute limit of the BMW Williams has put him on pole for every race since the middle of May. Let's join Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Jim. Afternoon, everybody. Well, he may have wrapped up his 5th world title last Sunday, but Michael Schumacher is still very much a man in a hurry. Fastest in yesterday's practice session, and again this morning he's pushing just as hard as he can, even extending himself yesterday to beat Rubens Barrichello. He pushed very, very hard to be top of the timesheet. Why? Well, because he's never won the German Grand Prix in a Ferrari, that's why. It's one of the few accomplishments missing from his CV, but emotionally it's clearly very, very important. You can hear the air horns, and Connie there, who is Juan Pablo Montoya's fiancée, due to get married in October there, she's hearing the air horns as well. This is the largest crowd we've seen on a Saturday at a Grand Prix weekend so far this season, in my view. Capacity here 120,000, and there can't be too many empty seats even for qualifying day. Schumacher yesterday, when he went out on the track for the first time, waved to his loyal German fans, and they're here for a bit of a Schumi fest this weekend. So same old Michael, but very much an unrecognisable Hockenheim circuit, undergone a £40 million transformation. Gone are the long fast straights through the forest. Instead we have something which rather resembles the A1 ring in several places, and that's not surprising because the man who designed the A1 ring is the same Hermann Tilke we saw with Martin Brundle just a quarter of an hour ago walking around the track. So what do we say about this circuit? Well, it's got the longest and fastest corner in Formula One. The new Parabolica is just over 1 kilometre long, and the cars hit 195 miles an hour, but the drivers say it's more like driving down a straight. But you'll see for yourselves when the cars are going around and we have the cameras on them, it does look very much like a corner. They've cut about 1.5 miles out of the track, and although most drivers seem to feel that the character has gone from Hockenheim, they also seem to think it's possibly better as a racing venue. What do you think, Martin?
Well, we've certainly seen a lot of action, haven't we? I don't think I've witnessed so many Formula One cars falling off the road and spinning around in one practice session as we've seen through this Friday and Saturday running to date. The free practice more like a skating rink really than a racetrack, if you judge that by how many drivers have been off the road. I think because it's such a new facility, and quite clearly there's been a lot of construction around, the track is very, very dusty, and they've struggled to find grip. And we've got 2 or 3 teams out there with a major headache, the biggest one of which is McLaren. Any team that's got a car that's quite light on its tyres, which has helped them out in some races earlier on in the season, I believe Arrows are in the same boat. A car that's kind to its tyres normally is a good thing, but if you're not generating the tyre temperatures because the track is not giving you the grip you need at this stage, you're really in trouble. McLaren's really struggling to stay in the top 10 this morning, and I'm sure, I mean, they nearly won the Grand Prix last weekend, so we know they've got a basically good package. They just can't find the setup around this new layout. So there'll be a lot of setup changes going on in McLaren and a few other teams at the moment. So I don't think necessarily a Michelin is better than Bridgestone or Bridgestone better than Michelin. It's this question of which teams have hooked in to this new layout, a track where they will never have tested before. It's not an official test track here at Hockenheim.
There you can see the crowd doing a Mexican wave. Still quite a few Finnish flags, even though Mika Häkkinen is no longer with us. And you saw from Ted Kravitz's report there, Häkkinen announcing his retirement, doing it in a way that only Mika really could have done it, which is to hire a film crew to go out to his home, his summer home in Finland, and be filmed rather like some sort of sentimental Hollywood movie with his wife and his small child by the pond on the boat, throwing stones into the water, and with a rather moving voiceover from Mika himself saying why he doesn't really want to come back. His life with his family is what he really wants. Louise is down in the pits with Gerhard Berger.
Gerhard, we're kind of getting used to seeing your man Juan Pablo Montoya on pole. Are we going to see it again today?
Well, I said the last 2 races already is impossible. We're going to see 2 Ferraris in the first row, and end of the day he could handle it. So you never should say no, but I think Ferrari shows a very strong performance this morning. We're going to try hard to beat them, but not going to be easy.
It's not looking quite so good for you, is it, here? I mean, just generally speaking, Ferrari seem to be way ahead of you. Have you fallen back, or have they gone ahead?
Well, in qualifying, I think we are quite close there, but in the race conditions, we are definitely a good step behind, but we are working hard to close the gap. But they are keep going and working hard too, so it's very difficult to catch up.
You won here as a driver on the old Hockenheim track. What do you think of the new circuit? Do you fancy having a run around?
Well, the old was a very traditional, real big circuit. I loved it, and as you say, I won twice, so I have a special feeling to it. But 2 days ago I ran around this circuit, and I think it's very nice done. It's very safe, good for the fans to oversee the whole circuit. So I think it's a great circuit, but it's one of these new style circuits, and doesn't have that big sympathy than Spa or Old Hockenheim.
Thanks, Gerhard.
Yes, I think they may have made a slight mistake here in that it's turning out to be a very short lap. We're looking at pole position somewhere in the 74-second range, and makes it now one of the shortest laps of the year. Austria takes that, doesn't it, at sort of a minute 9, minute 10. And I think they really did expect this new layout to be more in the 80-plus second bracket, but the cars are so fast. And what called them out is because of the new layout, they're all running so much more downforce, so much more wing on the cars, giving them tremendous grip in this final stadium section, and they're much faster. And it used to be a real tippy-toe job here. You went out into the country at a 220 miles an hour and you needed no wing on the car whatsoever, and when you got back to the stadium you then had to make the best of a bad job. Now they're absolutely nailing it all through this section,
particularly turn 1. It's absolutely awesome to watch the cars turning into turn 1. It's also awesome just to watch some of the characters in the crowd. I mean, look at that. What does he think he's doing? Fantastic. There's some really great people out there with all kinds of ridiculous outfits, and it's interesting the kind of support that Schumacher attracts as well. It's very much a blue-collar support, as we see Alex Young taking his traditional role of being out on circuit first. It's very much a blue-collar support, rather like Nigel Mansell's was in the UK. They really do come out and scream and shout for Michael Schumacher. This is that long parabolica then I was talking about, giving way into this very tight first gear hairpin. And we've got this tremendous camera, which the local German television have put in. It does 120 kilometers an hour, trying to keep up with the racing cars. It's 650 meters of track, and they tell me it needs 100 meters to stop, and I certainly want to remember where the braking point is for the camera, otherwise you'd send it flying into the car. But great pictures we're looking forward to from qualifying, particularly from the race, because that will be one of the key overtaking zones, won't it, that hairpin section?
Yes, indeed. You have to say RTL, who do the host broadcast here in Germany, always do a pretty good job, and they were the first with those super slow-mo actions at the chicanes we used to see out in the forest there. But a new innovation then for the terrestrial TV, and it's very good for us. We're looking forward, as you say, James, to some great pictures this weekend. 52 minutes remaining then of this session, and we have the first car on the track, Alex Young.
As Takuma Sato gets strapped in as well. Interestingly, Paul Stoddart, the boss of the European Minardi team, was in the press conference yesterday and was asked about Alex Young's season. He said, well, he's not had the best of years. He said he struggles to learn circuits and he struggles to qualify, which for a Grand Prix driver, obviously two pretty crucial elements of their game.
Yeah, he hasn't given up, but he has made a lot of mistakes, and it has to be said that Alex doesn't appear to have the pace at the moment to be a frontline Grand Prix driver, but he would still blow the doors off of just about any other Formula in the world. Such is the level of Formula One racing. But Young then out on track. What's happening down there with Paul Stoddart and the Minardi team, James, do you think? All sorts of stories through the year. They'd have financial difficulties, and you hear that it's up for sale. What's your take on that?
Well, he's certainly pushing very hard to get a supply of Cosworth engines for next year, as far as I can see, and clearly Mark Webber, who tested for the Jaguar team, is part of that equation, because Jaguar is also part of the same company that owns Cosworth. There might be some sort of trade to be done there. Stoddard seems to have his head up, but also you hear rumours about possible Arab princes buying into the team, and lots of money men have been visiting the team in recent races. We will see as Alex Young comes through to complete his first flying lap, and it's going to be quite critical for him to break a minute 20. We did a few basic calculations, a 1:21.4 his opening effort before. Michael Schumacher's fastest time this morning was a 1:14.487. Now we expect him to go a little bit faster than that. In fact, he might go considerably faster than that this afternoon, maybe get into the low 14s. If that's the case, for Alex Young to qualify, he needs to be within 107% of the fastest time, and that will be somewhere in the mid-19s. So clearly Young about 2 seconds off the kind of pace he's going to need. He's failed to qualify, Martin, for 2 Grand Prix already this season, one of which was, as you remember, Silverstone. And I think it's fair to say that he's in a bit of danger this afternoon if he doesn't turn the wick up a little bit. Yeah,
Alex has got to go out there and use the track a lot more, carry a lot more speed through the corners, and lean on the extreme edges of the racetrack. You know, he hasn't worked out yet that Grand Prix drivers make the ultimate pickpockets and burglars, really, because they're always out there all over the racetrack. The first thing they do at a new facility is stretch every barrier, try every new piece of tarmac, every curb, and somehow find a way to steal a few tenths of a second. We've only seen Alex Young on the track. We'll be back shortly.
"47 minutes of qualifying for tomorrow's German Grand Prix remaining, and you're just taking another overhead view of this Hockenheim circuit surrounded by woodland, and certainly it seems as though the old track being taken up, more trees likely to go down there. It really is a very green and luscious part of the German countryside.
I hope they've kept the Jim Clark Memorial that's out there, down there on that first straight. So I'm told they did, and I can't find it. I did ask where it's been moved to, but I'm told that it was recovered.
You'd need a degree in orienteering to find it, I think, in the future, once they plant some trees down there. It's
Absolutely.
Very tricky. There you see just how different it is. The old Hockenheim ripping up through the trees and then ripping back again, as you can see, coming straight through the middle of your screen off to the left there, the old Sachs curve. And they really have changed it quite considerably. Ted, what can you tell us?
Just going to update you on the tyre situation as we see Takuma Sato goes out behind me, James. The engineers learned a lot from France, you know, last week. Of the Michelin runners, all the teams have actually gone for the compound that worked so well in Magny-Cours for McLaren and Renault. You remember Raikkonen almost won on that tyre. That's actually the harder of the two tyres on offer here at Hockenheim. And of the Bridgestone guys, well, Ferrari have actually gone the conservative route, and they've taken the harder tyre as well. The forecast, the weather forecast tomorrow, Martin, is for a real scorcher. And I think Ferrari have got the speed to make that tyre work, whatever the weather, really.
Yeah, I think they've got the downforce and grip and power to go with almost whatever tyre they choose to put on that car at the moment. They can make it work. And I think the harder grade of tyre is what's hurting some of the teams down in the middle order. But Sato then out on track. He's been going a lot better lately. That's the camera that James was telling you about that does some 60 to 70 miles an hour following the cars out of the hairpin. Can Sato do anything about Jung's stunning new qualifying record? It is a qualifying record.
It is, absolutely. You can say that for at least 15 minutes he held the qualifying record at the new Hockenheim circuit. There's a man with a lot on his mind at the moment, Eddie Irvine, considerably faster since Jaguar made the changes to that car for Silverstone, but clearly didn't have enough time to test them at Silverstone. But France last weekend, he was really going very well indeed until his rear wing fell off, comfortably qualifying in the top 10. Can he do it again this afternoon? Time will tell. We're looking now at Takuma Sato, lots of sparks coming out from underneath the Jordan. And this man also the subject of considerable discussion and speculation. One school of thought is that Eddie Jordan might actually use the Honda engines again next season. Honda apparently quite keen, after all, to work with Jordan again. And one of the main reasons for that may well be that if they don't, this guy might find himself out of Grand Prix racing after just one season. And that would not be good for Japan or for Sato's career at all. As you can see, that camera shooting aloft like a little rabbit on a greyhound track down the left-hand side of the straight.
I was talking to Sato yesterday, and he was saying that Formula One shocked him. He didn't realise how hard it would be. And I said to him, I made the same mistake. You think a Formula One car is just 50 kilos heavier than your Formula 3 car and 30 miles an hour faster, but it's just a whole new world. Whatever you knew before you came into Formula One, you knew nothing effectively. But look at the amount of time advantage he's got over that somewhat pedestrian early lap by Alex Young. Sato, I think, really finally beginning to hook up with the realities and the requirements of making a Formula One car work. Heading towards the line then, James.
Yes, he is pushing hard for the line. This is not a bad opening time, 1:17.5 for Takuma Sato. It's a second slower than he managed this morning. The track temperature has crept up a little bit. One of the BARs out on track as well. Olivier Panis, another man about whom there's a considerable amount of speculation, Martin, with the news that clearly that Jenson Button is going to be at BAR next year. Will he ride alongside Button? Will Villeneuve be farmed out, or rather take a sabbatical for a year? I think the idea being that BAR would keep $19 million, which they would otherwise have to pay Villeneuve, use it for developing the car, and then bring him back the following year. That sounds, certainly if I was Villeneuve, I'm not sure I'd accept that.
Well, I read that story in Autosport magazine this week, and it completely confused me. I couldn't understand the philosophy or logic behind it at all, that they may still keep Panis and Villeneuve takes a year out and comes back again at a later stage. It just, I can't see any rationale behind that whatsoever. I'll have to try and find David Richards and understand if the story was correctly reported, and if so, what on earth's sort of happening.
Well, I spoke with David Richards yesterday, and in fact he's in our studio tomorrow. I'm sure Jim and Tony will be grilling him about this as Benoldi crosses the line in an 18-1. So clearly the track's slower at the moment than it was in this morning's free practice session, so the times not quite the same as they were this morning. But Richard certainly seemed to be implying it was something that would work very well for them. It may just be a bit of political pressure on Villeneuve, who knows? But certainly $19 million just to go into one driver's pocket when really there's no chance of winning. It's a development phase for BAR. Clearly that is $19 million that could otherwise be used to develop the car.
But why would Villeneuve walk away from such a huge paycheck if he thinks that, you know, the new personnel, the new bosses can make a big step forward at the team?
I think the incentive for him is that rather than having one more year, which is what he's got, and then being out, he would come back and they would extend the deal at the same rate for 2 years. So I don't know. Very interesting times at BAR. Lots of changes going on, and the team very ambitious for the future.
But we've seen what happened to Hakkinen. He took a year out just to be sure that was his right decision, and really basically he's got no interest in coming back whatsoever. Got several million in the bank, 2 world championships, 20 wins behind him. In a way, not dissimilar to Villeneuve, but I think if Villeneuve's got the motivation still, he'll want to be in there racing. I don't understand how you would just come out of it. But it has happened before. Prost did it, of course, and Lauda did it with some success. So it's not without precedent. It just seems a bit strange that he would walk away from that kind of money.
Indeed, it would be very odd indeed, but well, you never know with Jacques Villeneuve. He's made all sorts of interesting decisions in his career. As Panis dives into the pits without setting a time, he had clearly not got up to the expectations that he had for his lap. And the track at the moment then seems to be a little bit slower than it was this morning, and that's why you're seeing this waiting game. We've only had 3 cars set a time so far, and only 4 cars have actually even gone out on the racetrack. 40 minutes remaining in the session. .38 minutes of qualifying for tomorrow's German Grand Prix. Uninterrupted coverage now all the way to the finish of this qualifying hour, and I can tell you it's going to get pretty hot and hairy in the final few minutes here, because none of the top teams have come out yet to even look at the racetrack. The 2 BARs have been out. Panis set slowish time and went back in again, having not even really broken the line on a hot lap. Villeneuve is out on track at the moment having a look, and so is Heidfeld. This is Mark Webber on track. Moment, Takuma Sato fastest, Benoldi in the Arrows second, and Alex Young third. This is Webber trying to put some daylight between himself and his teammate Young, who did a 21.4, and that's almost 2 seconds faster. And that's Mark Webber into third place.
But still 1.4 slower than his best time this morning, but he outbraked himself here into turn 2 on his hot lap, and also into the hairpin at the end of that next straight. So not a particularly tidy lap for Webber, but now then Villeneuve on track. Heidfeld, he's been going well in the Sauber. De La Rosa and Irvine. Jaguar, I think, along with McLaren and Renault, somehow not really hooked up so far in free practice. Hopefully they'll all find a better setup and bring themselves into play. Frentzen also out on the racetrack now. 37 minutes to go and well over 200 laps available to the field at the moment, James. So as you say, it's going to get frantic.
That's an extraordinary thought, isn't it? Everybody, generally speaking, does 4 timed runs. They're allowed a maximum of 12 laps in the qualifying hour, and you've got to fit them in, because the run is obviously an out lap, a fast lap, and then an in lap. And well, we've only got 36 minutes in which to do it. This is Jacques Villeneuve, though, at the new hairpin. First gear, 30 miles an hour. And what's astonishing is from here to when he hits the braking point for the next corner, he's up already to about 135, 140 miles an hour in what? A few hundred metres.
Yeah, and especially as he doesn't brake there. That's flat, though, an absolutely flat right-hander. But you saw all the yellow stuff coming out of the back of the cars because they replaced what's known as the plank underneath the car, and lower ride heights for qualifying. Jacques always seems to like the backside of his car dragging along the racetrack, and it does give you more rear downforce, but it also gives you some problems on the bumps.
Well, a man with still a lot to prove, even though he is a world champion in 1997, many pole positions and wins to his credit. He was on the podium here last year, and that's the last time he stood up there, and one of only 2 times, in fact, he stood up there in his entire BAR career. But he takes provisional pole at the moment, but we've yet to see any of the big guns out on track. Pedro de la Rosa's out there at the moment. Nick Heidfeld is looking like being probably one of the fastest men we've seen so far. Here he is. Yes, indeed, takes provisional pole. I've got a question for you, Martin. How often has this guy not qualified in the top 10 this season? Nick Heidfeld, would you guess?
Not qualified in the top 10. Four times.
Just the once.
Is that right?
It's not bad, is it? Considering he's in a Sauber with a factory engine. Very, very impressive performance in qualifying. They've had 6 points finishes as well, the Sauber team.
Yeah, but he's not shone in the races then, has he, with that kind of qualifying performance?
No, exactly. It's been very strong on Saturday, but not quite so clever on a Sunday. Pedro de la Rosa goes 4th fastest, so Heidfeld, Villeneuve, Sato, de la Rosa, Bernoldi, Irvine, the top 6 at the moment. And Coulthard is out on track, so's Felipe Massa, and Ralf Schumacher and Alan McNish as well. So we've got quite a few cars out on track, 12 in total, and a little bit of traffic starting to build up as we look at Eddie Irvine, and then cut to Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the orange arrows going through the Sachs curve. Kept his head pretty steadily throughout all the problems that Arrows have had in the last 2 Grand Prix. Heinz-Harald, and he's a good outside bet for a point here this weekend as he comes across the line. This should be the fastest time so far. No, drops down to 3rd place. And a fair bit of speculation surrounding him as well, Martin, for next season, because there's some talk he might even end up back at Jordan again.
I think there is talk that Jordan may be going forward, maybe going with a German sponsor, and Frentzen, and a bit of business-to-business between those sponsors to make the numbers add up. That would seem a very sensible package. Wouldn't it be ironical if he went back to Jordan just as they dropped him just before his home Grand Prix last year? We're about to see Raikkonen go top. Indeed he does, with a 16.1, and that is faster than he went this morning. Coulthard is behind him on the track and is the fastest man in Sector 1. We pick him up in Sector 2. David Coulthard then, okay, it's the same as Raikkonen in the middle sector, and he remains a fraction up. Look, 1/100th of a second up on his teammate. What can he do through these final few corners that will resemble the track that he used to know? But the last 2 are absolutely tighter, shorter and slipperier than they used to be. It used to be a thrill coming through there. Now it's more of a technical challenge, and Coulthard just makes it 2nd.
Yes, he dropped 0.4 of a second then in that final sector of the lap as we ride on board with Ralf Schumacher on the front row here last year in an all-Williams BMW front row. Remind you, he won the Grand Prix last year very dramatically after his teammate Montoya blew up, and Michael Schumacher had an enormous accident at the start. Ralf Schumacher got a lot of work to do to get himself back on terms with Juan Montoya. Can he start today by out-qualifying the Colombian? Hasn't done that for a while. 0.4 of a second faster than the McLarens, and that once again underlines how the Williams seems to be the better qualifying car, but come Sunday the McLaren does seem to just have that edge. Interestingly, as we look at Fisichella bouncing back from his injury in 3rd place, since Monaco, Martin, the McLarens have had 4 podiums and Williams have only had 1, which is astonishing if you think about the way that they started the season.
Yeah, it really tells the story, doesn't it? But Fisichella then confirming his strong pace of this morning to move up to provisional 3rd place. There's your pole sitter, Ralf Schumacher, in the 1:15. The only man to do so, but pole is going to be in the 14s. Michael Schumacher did 2 laps in the 1:14s this morning, and McNish was up to 5th but is quickly dropping back to 8th. So the Toyotas again looking strong. They have been strong. Salo 6th, McNish 8th at this time.
Jenson Button jumps into 7th place. Renault have really been struggling this weekend for grip as Michael Schumacher goes out on track, and he'll be looking for something in the low 1:14s. It'll be very interesting for us to see what he can do relative to his time this morning. As you said, Martin, he did 2 laps in the low 1:14 range, and this Ferrari seems to just be on rails around this revised Hockenheim circuit. I'd be surprised to see him just chance the odd hand out of the cockpit to wave to his army of loyal fans. Before this guy came into Formula 1 racing, you could buy a grandstand seat on race day. Nowadays you can't even get one for 2 years down the road. Juan Montoya though is out on track and on a hot lap. He's in sector 1 at the moment. He's got one of the Minardis in front of him. I think it's Mark Webber, and he's just 3/1000ths of a second slower than his teammate in Sector 1. But as we've seen so many times with Montoya, he builds up to it, doesn't he? His third and his fourth runs are something very special. As Frank Williams says, Montoya goes to extremes, and it's entertained us royally this season, certainly in Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, he's sort of Senna-esque, isn't he? He can find a few tenths from nowhere when he really most needs to, no doubt about it. Montoya can pull something ridiculous out of the bag, really. I mean, British Grand Prix, he found 9/10 of a second from nowhere. And Michael Schumacher crosses the line. You can hear the crowd underneath us. And Montoya, well and truly off the road then, coming into the stadium section. And that lap is trashed. He was the fastest man in the middle sector, but the final sector absolutely gone. He'll surely come in the pit lane. No, he decides to carry on. No point really. But over the line he goes then and registers a P. That's incredible, isn't it? He's still P5 despite all the rally crossing.
Well, it was a 1:16.6. I guess it would have been something in the low 1:15s, but who knows? I'm sure we'll find out. Anyway, it's half an hour to go in this session. Rubens Barrichello, the other Ferrari, also out on track. And he's once again been giving Michael Schumacher something to think about. Rubens, who won here, his first Grand Prix victory 2 years ago on the old Hockenheim circuit. He's inside, fractionally inside, that time of Ralf Schumacher. But this is where the Ferrari really has the edge over the BMW Williams. This final set of twisty turns and corners, the Sachs curve, the chicane, and then these final two turns 13 and 14, the drive out of there across the line. And this is something in the low 15s, a 15.4 for Rubens Barrichello. But Michael Schumacher is out on circuit and is the fastest man so far. We're going to pick him up. Here he is. Schumacher drives for the line. A 15.0. So clearly the track is slower than it was this morning, because that's half a second off Michael's best time from the morning free practice.
Yes, but still 3/4 of a second faster than any other non-Ferrari runner. So there's confirmation then of that pace. And I think the track's quite dusty. There are a lot of sweepers out there, and have been all weekend. When we were making the track guide, they were coming at us from all directions, and after each practice run. And look at Montoya. Now watch this. He ends up doing a time just 9/10 of a second slower than his teammate, despite travelling 200-300 metres through the gravel and the grass. And then he got a tremendous understeer through the next few corners. In fact, it was understeer that put him off there as well, the front just not biting when he needed it. But with dirty tyres, he lost a lot more grip before the end of the lap as well.
One of the things, Martin, that a lot of the drivers have said about this revised Hockenheim layout is because it's so wide, there's nothing to hit when you go off the racetrack. So they can try things, they can push a bit harder through corners. And hopefully in the race it means they'll try and overtake each other a bit more, because if they do make a mistake, there's nothing to hit.
Yeah, well, some of the corners you can certainly live for another day. Jenson Button hit the wall this morning, but I believe that's because his engine blew up. And I think Button does not have a qualifying engine for this afternoon, which is a shame for him. He'll be a bit down on power from Jarno Trulli, but at the moment, Button in 12th place on the grid.
One team that very much does have a qualifying engine is McLaren, as Villeneuve drives for the line and goes 5th. And McLaren have something a little bit special here for Mercedes' home race. It's just for Saturday qualifying, and that may just give Raikkonen and Coulthard a little bit more of a push. It's not all about horsepower, the reasons that McLaren have been a bit slow in straight line this season. It's also possibly about drag as well, but clearly they are 30 or 40 horsepower down on the engines of BMW and Ferrari. As we look at the Sauber out on track, Nick Heidfeld attacking, and you see they're all running wide through there, using every inch of the racetrack. Into the Sachs curve goes Heidfeld, currently lying in 15th place, which is an unaccustomed place for him.
Yeah, but this is going to move him up an awful long way, James. Watch him now. This is going to put him well inside the top 10. And 7th indeed it is. So Heidfeld then is a little bit ahead of his teammate. He's down in 12th, but 16.399. How does that compare with this morning? That's still half second down on his best time this morning.
Some people are quicker. Rubens Barrichello did a 15.4 in qualifying, and this morning did a 15, well, nearly a 15.5. So one or two guys have gone faster than they did in this morning's pre-practice, but there's still a lot of time to come from this track. The temperature just dropping slightly down to 27 degrees, and some cloud cover as well around the area. So there's clearly going to be a sweet spot. There's going to be a time to be out on track. And we've only got 25 minutes to go, so finding it might be a bit tricky.
Two men not yet qualified then. Alex Young was slightly too slow with his 120.4, and he's outside the 107% rule. Panis in the second BAR has not really put in a competitive lap time. So at the moment, we have 20 starters in the Grand Prix, but as you said, 25 minutes to run.
So let's just run through who's where, shall we? Michael Schumacher on provisional pole, 1:15.059, just ahead of his teammate Rubens Barrichello. An all Ferrari provisional front row at the moment then. Ralf Schumacher third, Kimi Raikkonen fourth, ahead once again of his teammate David Coulthard. Really has been amazing for Raikkonen. He's 7-4 up in qualifying against the Scotsman this season. Seems to just have a couple of tenths over him everywhere we go nowadays. Fifth, still Jacques Villeneuve, going very well in the revised BAR. Giancarlo Fisichella sixth, Nick Heidfeld seventh, Takuma Sato in the second Jordan is eighth. McNish, brilliant effort from him, still in ninth place, ahead, would you believe, of fellow Scotsman David Coulthard, who clearly had some problems on his first run in the McLaren. Montoya down in 11th place. We saw the problem he had going off the track. Jarno Trulli 12th, and Jenson Button slipping down to 17th place now. Eddie Irvine 19th. Is this going to move him up? Yes, it is. It should move him up a few places, up to 13th for Eddie Irvine.
Yes, but definitely they look like they're going to be well into the second half of the field this afternoon. Jaguar not appearing to be strong here. A bit like, as I said, Renault and McLaren not able to make their Michelins work in the same way that Williams have been able to do so. But if it's not an all Ferrari front row, it's going to take a magnificent effort, probably from a Williams driver, to spoil it again, because at the moment Ferrari seem to have a good second in their pocket. Panis goes fourth from not being in the race, pulls one out of the bag with a 16-0 as we're watching Schumacher in the pits, and Olivier Panis takes fourth slot.
Well, we were talking about Kimi Raikkonen being 7-4 against David Coulthard in qualifying. That's the same figure as Olivier Panis. He really has got the measure of Jacques Villeneuve within that team, certainly in qualifying. And the Frenchman clearly out to impress at the moment. Both Jaguar and Toyota, who potentially might employ him next season if he does leave the British-American racing team, as we look at a rather super slow-mo of Michael Schumacher, and it's like a football crowd, isn't it, in the stands.
Kimi Raikkonen's out on track, having just smashed the first sector time, so he's found some grip from somewhere. That's Frentzen. He's currently down, a long way down, 20th. It took me a long while to find him down the list, but this is a much better lap from him. But it's Raikkonen is the man on the move. Understandably, the German director wants to see Heinz-Harald Frentzen over the line to see what kind of improvement he makes, up to 15th. And where is Raikkonen then?
Well, we're hearing from our F1 ITV pit crew that he did quite a bit of work on the front end of his car. It seems to have worked for him. He's got the fastest first sector time. His middle sector has been better than he managed before, but it's still not as quick as the middle sector of Michael Schumacher. Nevertheless, he is within distance. This is the area where Ferrari have been beating the opposition. Can Raikkonen squeeze something out of this McLaren Mercedes as he runs wide out of the last corner, rushes towards the line, and stays fourth?
Yeah, he had a scruffy final sector. It wasn't even his best, let alone anybody else's best. But nonetheless, that makes him only the fourth man into the 1:15s. And if he tidies that final bit up, then he may just threaten Ralf Schumacher's third. And we're on board with Ralf Schumacher, and he is 0.3 of a second up on Michael's current pole position.
But he's amazing. He had a slow first sector, Ralf Schumacher, but somehow he's found enormous speed in the middle sector of the lap. Can he do something in the final sector as well to get himself up onto the front row? He's currently third, goes second.
And a great run it is too. So Ralf Schumacher then matches almost identically his fastest timer this morning. The track is beginning to come to them, beginning to clean up. Those road sweepers out there, having watched them working yesterday afternoon, they tend to spread the rubbish around rather than hoover it up particularly. And I think the drivers had to go out there and re-clean the racetrack and refine the grip.
Giancarlo Fisichella bouncing back from that awful accident at Magny-Cours last week, where he was not allowed to qualify or race following the 34G impact with the tyre wall. Astonishing figures. Anyway, he's bounced up again, and he is in fourth place. A fantastic lap from him, unseen by us, but he's jumped up to fourth. as we look at the McLaren.
And Coulthard then is 5th. This is his in-lap. He has put a fast lap in, a 1:15.9. Coulthard moving up from 12th to 5th place, and he will take to the pit lane.
Yeah, so Coulthard, Fisichella, Ralf Schumacher have all done 2 flying laps. Michael Schumacher's just gone out on track to see if he can improve on his 1:15.0. He's seen his brother getting more speed out of the racetrack, and he feels he can get some too. We'll pick him up in a second. Meanwhile, Ted has some news on Montoya.
Yeah, Montoya's been back in the pit. He's been deep in discussion, James, with his engineer, Tony Ross. I can tell you he's actually replaced the barge boards and the front part of the floor because he actually damaged them in that little off we saw earlier. Apart from that, the only changes he's made to the car is to stick a bit of fuel in and put on new tyres. Now that tells me that he's actually basically happy with the car. But Martin, I don't think that run of 5 poles is going to continue today.
Well, that's a brave statement to make, Ted, but I think you're right. As we see a Ferrari well off track, and which one was it? Because they're both out at the moment, and it was Michael Schumacher running wide and abandons that lap and just gets out of the way of his teammate. So that was in turn 1 then. Michael went in too deep, got it all wrong, was way in what would normally be a gravel trap, has now turned into a big tarmac zone, and Barrichello has a hot first sector.
Well, we were saying at the beginning that Michael Schumacher had to really extend himself in yesterday's untimed free practice to be ahead of Rubens Barrichello. It didn't really matter. He didn't need to do it. Nothing to prove, but he felt he needed to himself because he wants to win a German Grand Prix in a Ferrari. It's unfinished business for him. Barrichello is piling the pressure on his team leader. He's now got the use of the spare car for the rest of the season, and he wants 2nd place in the championship. But more important than that, he wants to be able to show that he has the speed to beat Michael Schumacher on merit. Schumacher's not going to give him any presents, but Barrichello pushing, and this is going to take him definitely very, very close to Schumacher's benchmark time, if not past it, as he rushes towards the line now. Is he in the 14s? He is. A 1:14.861, and the gauntlet firmly thrown down by Rubens Barrichello.
Yeah, it's a good run. He's on it. You watch him. He's got a very unusual driving style, Rubens. Watch him turn the steering wheel. I'll try and pick it up next time he's out on track. Jenson Button was on a stronger run. He is now up to 12. This is his teammate, Trulli, and he moves up to 10th. So Renault finding a bit of speed this afternoon. I'm absolutely sure, James, that these warmer track temperatures have definitely helped out. As we watched Michael Schumacher, he took a huge amount of curb on the way in, and I think it unsettled the car. In reality, I think he could have just carried on, but he knew he'd be penalised if he did that. So Schumacher's lap really thrown away at the very, very beginning.
Here's something we haven't seen all season. Alan McNish ahead of Jenson Button in qualifying. 12th at the moment for the Scotsman and 13th the Englishman. So that's a very interesting little tussle going on between the 2 Michelin teams.
And I think importantly, ahead of his teammate Salo as well as Alan McNish at the moment. He really does need to, I think he can still save that Toyota drive. There's no doubt about it. He's done a solid job for them. But we're watching Montoya then. Whatever he was talking about in the garage seems to have worked, and this time he's kept it on the track too. If that's a bit wide though, through the hairpin. Now just 2 corners ago. He tends to also use a lot of track on the outside. Yes, indeed, almost 2 wheels off the racetrack there. And Montoya over the line and goes only 4th. He's losing a lot of time. He's running too wide in that last sector, but he did miss the apex of the hairpin at the Sachs curve.
He did, but he did exactly what his teammate did, which is to lose all that time in the final sector of the lap. It's quite tight, isn't it, those final few corners? The Sachs curve, the chicane, and then turns 13 and 14. They're taken 80, 90 mile an hour corners, and clearly a lot of grip required at the front.
Yeah, because if you get out of shape in one of them, James, and it always used to be the same around here, but I wondered with all the extra downforce if it would sort of go away as a problem. But you get out of shape in one of them and you're never quite right for the next few then. It's like a sequence that you need to get right all the way through. So Montoya and Ralf Schumacher now on the 2nd row of the grid. So all Ferrari front row. There's Michael, the back of the car, just decked out a bit on the way in, and then he took too big a bite of the apex curb on the way through the corner. He was offline as he turned in because the back of the car hit the ground. Louise is down in the pits.
Yeah, I've just been watching Rubens Barrichello being pushed back into the garage, definitely on it for that 2nd run. Remember, he had to sit out The second session this morning, he had a big accident at the end of the first session, and the mechanics couldn't fix the car in time, but he definitely seems to have caught up. Just one other thing to note, both of the Ferraris, I'd had a quick look at their tyres as they went out of the garage. They both appeared to be on scrub tyres. That's quite unusual for the Ferraris in the qualifying session.
It's very unusual, unless they're trying to save all of their new ones for the race. But my understanding is that this is not a high tyre wear circuit because it's so slippery at this stage. Villeneuve then, he's 9th at the moment. He's on a slightly better lap at this stage. The main man so far for me in qualifying is young Fisichella, recovering from his big shunt at the last Grand Prix just last weekend. He's up in 5th place with the Jordan at the moment.
It's interesting that he should say that as Villeneuve comes through to complete his 3rd flying lap of the afternoon, which keeps him, although he improves his time, keeps him in 9th place. I thought Michael Schumacher's tyres, as he rolled down the pit lane, didn't look shiny new. They looked as though they had done a few laps, but they certainly didn't look what I would call scrubbed, i.e. they've done some work and they've had the top layer taken off them. So I wonder if they've just found maybe they just need to run a lap onto them or something before they qualify them. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's possible. I didn't see them doing it this morning, but they may have just run what they call an installation lap, and just to take the releasing agent that's used to get the tyres out of the moulds that's all shiny and slippery on the top. Maybe they felt the need to get rid of that before they used them in anger, so didn't bring them up to full temperature. And but they're still effectively new. They just get off that shiny stuff off the top as the Jaguar of De La Rosa bounces through the gravel trap. But as we saw with Montoya, he should stay on it. He was a lot less far off the racetrack than Montoya, so De La Rosa still has a chance, I think, of doing a decent lap time.
Yes, hasn't sort of had the luck with the new revised Jaguar that Eddie Irvine has had, Pedro De La Rosa, and that time does not improve his position. He is down in 19th place. His teammate Irvine is 15th. Button still struggling slightly in 14th. Teammate Trulli 11th. As we look again at De La Rosa just running off wide into the gravel trap.
This is the corner we were talking about on the track guide earlier. Look, same deal as Montoya, understeering, never quite got in. There's a groove in that corner quite clearly, but we used to arrive at 210 miles an hour and come down a few gears and just tippy-toe and hang on for grim death through there. Now they're arriving almost ready to accelerate. They're still in an acceleration phase and they're running wide and it's catching them out.
It's obviously critical, though, for the speed through the stadium section, the final sequence of corners. Get that corner right and you set yourself up with a very good chance of getting a very good time in the final part of the lap as Michael Schumacher winds up now on his outlap for another quick one.
And Panis has moved up to 6th in the white car that's just gone through the foreground in front of Michael Schumacher. Olivier Panis on a 1:15.8 up into 6th, another sterling performer. So Fisichella 5th, Panis 6th. That's an unusual 3rd row.
Certainly is. Haven't seen that very much this season. So looking like it will be BAR's best qualifying performance of the season so far. And it's just funny, isn't it, how when you're in the news and people are talking about you for all kinds of reasons like signing new drivers, you're also in the news for performance reasons as well. BAR then looking to hold on to a 3rd row start slot for Olivier Panis as Frentzen has a little bit of a tank slapper through that very, very tricky turn 10. He's currently down in 18th place, Heinz-Harald Frentzen. And is this going to improve his lot any, as we have 12 minutes of this qualifying session still to go. Several drivers still have 2 runs available to them. Nope, that was slower for Frentzen, stays 18th.
And then the man on the move once again is Kimi Räikkönen. Coulthard and Räikkönen both out on quick laps, as is Michael Schumacher now, has just done a new fastest first sector. So there's Räikkönen. There's lots of action out there right now. Michael Schumacher, David Coulthard, Kimi Räikkönen, all looking at very hot laps at this stage, where Räikkönen is the first of them. He will be the first to cross the line. He's currently in 8th place and he moves up to 5th place.
So Räikkönen leapfrogs teammate Coulthard, but Coulthard is out on track at the moment. He's had a very slow middle sector though, David Coulthard. We're waiting to see what Michael Schumacher can do though. He's been the fastest in the first 2 sectors, half a second. Oh my good Lord, and look at that, absolutely textbook the way he came out of turn 10. He's on now for a very fast time here. He's looking at something in the very low 1:14s to get himself ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Is this going to be the lap that gives Michael Schumacher the pole. The air horns are going. He rushes for the line and he takes provisional pole position. 1:14.6, but I feel there might be some more speed, not only in his car, but in Barrichello's car and maybe even in some of the competitors as well.
Yeah, well, Michael himself's been 3/10 faster in that final section. It seems as soon as they put their wheels outside that curb in the last two corners, they look quick but lose time. Nonetheless, then, Michael Schumacher setting a new high tide mark of a 1:14.628, but already Barrichello is out there responding. Coulthard had to abandon his lap. He obviously had some kind of problem in the middle sector. He remains 8th. Raikkonen moved up to 5th. Michael, as we saw, took pole position. Now we need to pick up this man because he is on a stunner. But it's 36 thousandths down as he heads into the stadium section. But Michael wasn't spectacular through these last few corners. Rubens could still just snatch that provisional pole.
Indeed he could. Rubens Barrichello does put a couple of wheels off the line as well. Maybe they will realise and change the tactics. Is this enough? No, it's not. 8/100ths of a second. And Rubens Barrichello needs to find something then on his final run of the afternoon. They've all got one run left. Eddie Irvine goes up to 12th fastest for Jaguar. That's pretty good, just outside the top 10 for him. Takuma Sato up to 10th in the Jordan as we ride on board with Ralf Schumacher, who's been fastest in the first sector.
Alex Young still not in the Grand Prix. He's out of the... as they keep going faster and faster, he now needs a 1:19.8 for 107% of the time. He's on a 1:20.2 with just one run left. But this man then is 0.02 of a second up into the Sachs curve. Look, tremendous grip on the inside here. It's almost like hanging onto a rail on a fairground ride if they can hook up to that. And Ralph just runs the curb, doesn't cross it. This is looking strong, James.
Yes, very gentle on the throttle. Did you hear Ralf Schumacher as he goes for the line? Yes! 5/100ths of a second! And Ralf Schumacher, on his home soil, under so much pressure, manages to find some speed as his brother, with 8 minutes of the session to go, gets out of the car. Now, whether he's just going to check the computer or pop to the loo, he's got 8 minutes to get himself back out on track. Well, he has to cross the line, actually, before the checkered flag, so he's probably only got about 5 minutes to do whatever Michael Schumacher has to do. But at the moment, it's a Schumacher front row. Ralph ahead of Michael. The last time those two guys were on the front row together was the USA last year, so it's been a while for them. We've had Montoya and Michael plenty this season, but not Ralph and Michael. And row 2 at the moment is Barrichello and Montoya. Then it's Raikkonen and Fisichella. An interesting row 3. Row 4 at the moment, Panis and Coulthard again. A BAR and a Jordan ahead of a McLaren. Who would have thought it? And row 5, Villeneuve and Sato, an all-Honda affair. Jenson Button currently in 16th, goes 11th. And does that put him ahead of teammate Trulli? Yes, it does. Trulli in 15th.
So Ralf Schumacher's been under pressure, hasn't he, from Frank Williams, and Frank says, yeah, he's disappointed, we're all disappointed, but Ralf Schumacher may just have done a Montoya there and pulled something out of the bag. If there's not a Ferrari on pole today, I think everybody in the paddock will be absolutely shocked, because it looked like a given once again, didn't it? You have to say it'll be the 6th consecutive Williams pole if they do it. But Michael Schumacher, we saw climbing back into his car, but that was a textbook lap from Ralf Schumacher. Just ran every curb, every concrete apron perfectly on that lap. You couldn't look at it and say, yeah, there's a bit more there to go yet. He just seemed to have everything hooked up nicely.
But there's a man out on the racetrack at the moment who has other ideas. He's been on pole 5 times in a row, and there he is, Juan Pablo Montoya, winding up for his 3rd run of the afternoon. He's just done the first sector, faster than he has been so far, but he's 0.2 of a second slower than his teammate. Can he find the speed in the middle and final sectors of the lap? He's done it before this season. He's done it before plenty. But he's going to need a very tidy and very fast lap if he's going to do it. And he's certainly down at the moment, 0.3.
Yeah, he had a lot of traction control kicking in as he came out of the hairpin at the far end of the circuit. And you could see him not going anywhere. And you can hear it again there. He's not got good traction, Montoya. He's not got the rear tyres hooked up in the way that he wants. And the electronics are having to interfere to stop the rear wheels from spinning. Goes over the line, and surely he'll stay 4th. Does indeed stay 4th. but goes marginally faster. But 6/10 down now on teammate Ralf Schumacher.
That's a lot. We haven't seen Ralf Schumacher assert himself over Montoya for some time now. It's been slim pickings for the German, but he's done it when it mattered, really, in front of his home crowd. We've got just 5 minutes and 50 seconds of the session remaining. At the moment, Fisichella in 6th place, looking set to equal his best of the season. Kimi Räikkönen in 5th. He's been there 7 times before this season. It's amazing consistency of qualifying for Kimi Räikkönen, as Pedro de la Rosa, currently 20th, crosses the line and stays in 20th place. Takuma Sato, a word for him, running in 10th place at the moment. If he can hold on there for the last 5 minutes, that will be his best qualifying of the season as well.
And he's looked like he's going to do something like that. It has to be said, Sato going well, Fisichella going especially well in the other Jordan, still remains 6th. Disappointing performances today have to be Sauber, 13th and 15th, when they've looked solid top 10 material through free practice. You're watching a slow-mo replay of Montoya not doing the lap time that he wanted. Yes, indeed, Heidfeld and Massa 6th and 7th this morning and looked good on it, but they're massively behind. And McNish and Salo in the Toyota also threatened with 8th and 10th this morning. They're 16th and 17th this afternoon, but at least McNish ahead of Salo at this stage. Everybody has one run left except De La Rosa. De La Rosa is over. Bernoldi is on his final hot lap as well. Alex Young still not in the Grand Prix. He needs to find half second on his final run. He's some 2.3 seconds off the back of the field and his teammate in 21st place.
We're into the final mad 4 minutes of qualifying. Ted, what can you tell us?
Just to update you on the Sauber situation, Nick Heidfeld had engine trouble with his race car. He's actually had to take to the spare car, which was set up for him. I think that goes some way to explaining their lack of pace. But I tell you what's impressive is Jenson Button's 11th place. And that's because he missed most of this morning session after an off. He hit the wall. So he's been trying to plug away at the front of the car, trying to dial out the understeer in that car. And my word, if he keeps plugging away with it like this, he'll move further up that grid.
Thank you, Ted. Yes, a few stories to look out for then in this final 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Alex Young, currently on a 20.2, needs a 19.7, and that's if the pole time doesn't drop anymore. So he needs to find half a second to make it into the Grand Prix. In 11th and 12th places, we have Trulli and Button in the 2 Renaults. So Button has to get in front of Jarno Trulli, at least for honour, as much as anything else. Michael Schumacher, currently 2nd, wants to get in front of his brother for tomorrow's pole position for tomorrow's German Grand Prix. And let's not forget also, this is Heidfeld in the Sauber, looking to get himself in the top 10, and he does it. Found an awful lot of speed in the spare car. Fair play to the guy. That's a good effort.
Yeah, he was quicker in all 3 sectors. He hooked up the 3 bells, as we call it, when you're looking at the data after the qualifying sessions, where you got your 3 best sectors of all of your runs all on the same lap. So all the bells up for Heidfeld, moved him from what was 17th up to 9th.
Very relaxed looking Ralf Schumacher there. A big smile for his chief mechanic as he was dropped down. The tyre covers came off. So Ralf obviously enjoying himself out there today, feeling very calm and relaxed. But it's going to be anything but relaxed in this remaining 2.5 minutes of qualifying. Rubens Barrichello seizes back the initiative for Ferrari. He's looking for only his 3rd pole of the season. He's rather been left out of the pole position battle of late, but here at Hockenheim, where he won spectacularly from 16th on the grid, or was 18th on the grid, I think it was 2 years ago, Barrichello really attacking the race course now.
He is indeed. He's got such a peculiar style, Rubens. He sort of jiggles the car into the corner. He takes a couple of little nibbles on the steering wheel just to load the outside 2 tyres up, it seems, and then launches it in. But he's lost a little bit in the middle sector. Now, can he hook up that white line on the inside? If he runs too high, and it's not bad, it's not great, but it's certainly not bad, and he's got a 10th to find somewhere. A lot of understeer in the final sector for Barrichello. I'd be surprised if it does it, but I've been surprised before. Over the line he goes, and he stays 3rd.
Yes, he had the fastest first sector, but then lost time in the middle and 3rd sector of the lap. Who has the speed to take the provisional pole, to take the pole position away from Ralf Schumacher? Michael Schumacher has. He's out on track at the moment, and you can see for yourself, he's nearly 2 tenths faster. Juan Montoya, does he have the speed?
But look at the traffic that Michael's facing now. So bundles of traffic on the racetrack. Will they be looking in their mirrors? The Jordan should see him comfortably. Indeed does, moves out of the way. What about that Williams down there? That car is trying to build up speed, and that also moves out of the way. So it clears the path nicely for Michael Schumacher. Now we're going to see his middle sector anytime soon. His first sector blitzed everybody else, and he's kept most of it, so he's a 10th up. It's really nip and tuck. Remember, he lost some time here last time around, and again that worked well, but still not as good as the Williams, no doubt about it. There is a better line lower down. If you can make the front end of the car stick enough to get there, it looks great, but not spectacularly brilliant through there. But is it fast enough? Indeed it is. Michael Schumacher then nicks pole position by just under 0.2 of a second.
17, 16, 15, 14, 13 seconds remaining in this qualifying hour. We're on board with Ralf Schumacher, who is on his final run of the afternoon, and he's not going to be able to pinch back pole from his brother. The only man who can do it now out on track, in my view, is Juan Montoya. He has just completed the first sector of the lap. He's gone faster than he has been so far, but he's about 9/100ths of a second slower than Michael Schumacher. And certainly sector 1 has been the best sector really for the Williams team so far. So it's going to take something spectacular from Montoya to steal it back. We're looking at Ralf Schumacher just winding down and cutting across, and there Montoya goes off. So Michael Schumacher has the pole position for tomorrow's German Grand Prix, because for the second time in this qualifying hour, Juan Montoya has made a mistake. He's run wide off the track, and the sequence has been broken. 5 consecutive pole positions for Juan Montoya, and finally Schumacher has pinched back the initiative. He has his 4th pole of the season, and that's what Montoya did.
Yes, looked to wheel up and just had to take to the grass, knew he couldn't turn into the corner. If he kept trying to turn, eventually he would spin. McLaren's didn't improve either, so they remain 5th for Raikkonen, and Coulthard goes down to 9th because Trulli just pulled something out of the bag to take 8th. So 5th and 9th for McLaren. Fisichella and Panis remain 6th and 7th. Great run from those two today, no doubt about it, but it's an all Schumacher family front row.
Indeed, Jenson Button just dropping down, couldn't find any more speed in his final run of the afternoon in the Renault. He is down in 13th place, and that he'll be embarrassed by that. 5 places below teammate Trulli, despite what Ted was saying about his problems this morning with an engine failure and an accident in free practice, cutting down his time. But nevertheless, no doubt about who the pole sitter is. 47th time in his career, and that's set him up very nicely, I would think, for a run at something one of the few things he's never done before in his long and illustrious career, and that's win a German Grand Prix in a Ferrari. Just waiting for, I believe, probably his brother, is it, to come in to congratulate him? Either that or pulling someone out of a manhole cover. No, it's his brother Ralf. A little bit of a show for the German cameras. As I said before, USA 2001, the last time you saw these two together